Hey there, welcome to this episode of the Cutting Room Floor. This is where I get to take you a little bit deeper into something from a recent message here at Sunny Slope Church. Usually something in a passage that we're looking at that maybe it would we just don't have time to get into it in a message, or maybe it's a detail that might not be central to the text, but it's still interesting and it's still relevant. And this gives me a chance to kind of go with you a little bit deeper into this. Yesterday, we looked at Proverbs chapter 8. And Proverbs chapter 8 is really, it's an appeal from wisdom. It's wisdom speaking to us and inviting us to pursue wisdom. In Proverbs chapter 8, as we get a little near to the end of the text, there is this line or this section where wisdom personified is actually describing how she was present at creation. Wisdom in the book of Proverbs is almost always described as a woman, as a lady. And in Proverbs chapter 8, there's a section where she reminds us that she was present at creation. Here's the section we're talking about. It's beginning in 8 verse 22, and we go all the way down to a little later in about verse 31. In particular, there's a couple lines that I think are rather strange. I didn't touch on them yesterday, but I wanted to point them out to you today. Look at what he says. For example, here, when he, that's God, drew a circle on the face of the deep, or when he established the fountains of the deep. What in the world does that mean? It's a rather strange way of speaking. And you'd be tempted to just maybe skip past it, but it actually points us to something that I think is pretty interesting. It's an understanding of what we say the Hebrew cosmology. All that means is it's a Hebrew understanding of how the world is put together. I mean, we obviously live in a time where we have what we call a heliocentric understanding of the universe. It's rooted in science. It's rooted in what we can understand, right? You have the sun at the center of the solar system and the planets that revolve around it. And we know that the earth is round and it rotates, and it rotates on its axis, and it revolves around the sun, and we've got all these planets. And of course, that's rooted in a scientific understanding of how the universe has been created and put together. But Hebrew people, of course, did not have a modern scientific understanding of how the world was put together. And if you read through places in the Bible, in fact, there's quite a few places where it's pretty clear that the language points to something a little bit out of our experience. So let me give you an example. In the creation account, and I think you should be able to see this. Let me clear off the drawings first. In the creation account in Genesis chapter 1, we read this. Let the waters in the heavens be gathered into one place, and let dry land appear. And the waters were called sea. Okay, that makes sense. But at the same time, it does sound a little bit strange, because how do the waters get gathered into one place? Is God just sort of moving them around, or what's going on? Another verse, let there be an expanse in the midst of the waters. Let it separate the waters from the waters. Other translations talk about a firmament, and it's a little bit like, well, what does that mean? Let me give you another passage. This is from Malachi chapter 3. In Malachi chapter 3, this is the prophet Malachi urging the people to bring their tithes and offerings, which is all well and good. But then it draws our attention to this rather unusual phrase, which is the windows of heaven. And it's kind of like, well, what does that mean? What windows? Is this just sort of metaphorical language, or what? Give you one more example. Well, a couple more examples, actually. These are just general, where for example, we read about the ends of the earth. Well, where is the end of the earth, right? We know in our understanding there is no end of the earth, because the earth is as a sphere. So you could look for the ends of the earth, you'll never find it. Or another phrase that occurs frequently in the Bible talks about the foundations of the earth. And again, we might be tempted to just kind of skip over that, or just maybe not pay much attention, or just chalk it up to, metaphorical language or something. Which isn't entirely a bad way to go, but it maybe doesn't do full justice to an understanding of the world. So let me show you. I'm gonna pull this up here. Oops. Yeah, I'll put this on the screen. I'll share this with you, and then I'll explain to you just a little bit about how Hebrew people looked at the world. This is a picture. You should be able to see this now on your screen. This is a picture of Hebrew cosmology. Hebrew cosmology is how the Hebrew people, how the Israelites would have understood the way that the world was put together. And this actually is important because it reminds us that when the Bible talks about creation, most of the time it is not trying to give us a scientific explanation for how the world is made. That's just not the message or the point of the biblical text. There's other things, other messages that the Bible is trying to make when it describes creation. Which I'm not going to get into here, but I am going to just kind of walk you through what this is like. So, oops. So, this is, well, I'll have to use my little hand here. First off, you start off with you've got the waters above. So you have to understand it's kind of a dome. If you've seen the Truman Show actually gets us pretty close to how the Hebrews would have understood what the world is like. You start off with a dome. This dome here was called the firmament, and hence you get that language in the book of Genesis. The firmament is essentially, it's the dome that separates the waters above and the waters beneath. And so underneath this, so you have this dome here with all the waters above, and then you've got the heavens and the sky here, or the sky here, I should say, and then the earth beneath and the waters underneath the earth. And so, and the firmament is what essentially is the boundary between those, the waters above and the earth beneath and the waters below that. The earth itself would be here, and given that the sky above is a dome, again, if you picture yourself standing on a wide open prairie, it does feel like you're standing in the midst of a dome, because the sky meets the horizon, right? The horizon is where the sky meets the ground on all sides of you, and so you're at the middle, and it's kind of like the sky above is like a dome, and so then the ground would be like a wide circle all around you. And that's why it says in Proverbs chapter 8 that God draws a circle on the earth, because essentially what the writer is saying is that God is creating, when God created this circle, he's creating wisdom. So now you have the ground, you have the earth itself, which in Hebrew cosmology would be circular. You've got the dome above, you've got the waters above that, you've got the waters beneath. The foundations of the earth then are essentially these pillars that the Hebrew people understood to go way down, and they are then the support for the earth. And so they understood that the firmament here would have been supported by these foundations, or by these pillars. And then you've got the mountains that come up above that. And then you have in the dome above, you have of course you have the waters above, but then you also have the windows and the doors of heaven. So when Malachi talks about the windows of heaven, what it's really saying is it's got these openings in the firmament, and so when it rains, essentially the windows open and the waters above then pour down onto the earth beneath. Now, one more thing that's worth putting, well, maybe it's two more things. The first is that underneath you have this place called Sheol. Sheol is sometimes translated, or it's understood to be what hell is all about. And that's true enough, but it's not exactly accurate. For the Hebrew people, Sheol was the realm under the earth. It was the realm of the dead. It's essentially where you would bury the bodies. You'd bury people, and they go into the under the earth. It's not necessarily talking about hell as we understand it in terms of a place of separation from God. It's talking about the realm of the dead underneath. Above it all, of course, you have God, and God is over all things. He is above the entire creation, in the entire cosmos. So you have the God of heavens, and heavens are above here. Heavens are, you've got the separation between the water above and the earth beneath, and the waters underneath the earth. And so above that, all you have God. Now, question about all of this that's maybe worth some reflection. Does this mean that the Bible is inaccurate? Is the Bible wrong? Well, no. God is revealing himself to his people in ways that they would understand. God is communicating, and of course, if God had been communicating to his people and speaking to them about the earth and the universe in terms of scientific terms, it would have made no sense. The people would have been completely mystified. And so God reveals himself in ways that his people in a pre-scientific era would have understood. And he uses language in ways that they would have understood. The essential truth is still the same. I mean, you have a world created by God. You have the God who is over all things, the God who causes the rains to fall, the God who is the creator and sustainer of all. All of that remains true. It's just that God reveals it in a way that his people can understand. And so if you read through, especially creation accounts, you read through Psalm 104, you read through Genesis 1 and 2, you read through language in the book of Job where it talks about the universe and its makeup, you will often run into this language of that reflects a Hebrew cosmology, and that's where it comes from. That's where that language comes from. So there you have it, a little picture into how the Hebrew people understood the universe and how that's reflected in our text today. Hope that was insightful and helpful for you. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.